Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Residents of Joseph Rowntree's St Ellen's Court all gathered recently to tell me about the devastating impact the cut in the winter fuel payment will have on their living standards. People in Withensea, Saturday last, gathered to demonstrate against it. Tomorrow, the Chancellor can do the right thing. Will she?
Chancellor.
And I'm sure that the honourable gentleman told him about the £22 billion gap that his government left in the public finances that has required the difficult decisions that this government has had to make to clean up the mess left by the party opposite.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the promised £300 cut in energy bills not materialising and the winter fuel payments scrapped for pensioners and now the bus cap lifted for our working people, using whatever definition she's using of that term today, can she honestly say that living standards will improve for everybody under this government?
Chancellor.
On the bus cap specifically, the honourable member will know that the previous government put no money in to extend the bus price cap. We have put money in to ensure that the bus cap remains at an affordable level for people, unlike this government, the previous government, who just had short-term gimmicks.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Department for Work and Pensions has deployed 500 additional staff to process pension credit applications as quickly as possible, and I would encourage all pensioners who might be eligible for pension credit to apply by the 21st of December, because, as you will know, that can be backdated by 3 months and can passport pensioners to other benefits.
Dr. Luke Evans.
I'm very grateful for the Minister's answer. A written question I put in to find out how long this would take. Almost 1 in 4 people who apply for pension credit are waiting longer than the 50 working days to be picked up, which means this is going to be past Christmas and into the new year. And that's before the data released by the government that there's been an increase of 150%. So I'm pleased to hear there's 500 more staff, but could we hear how much extra funding is going in immediately to make sure these are processed this side of Christmas? Because otherwise pensioners are really going to struggle.
Minister.
I'm very pleased to say that there's been a 152% increase in the number of pensioners who are applying for pension credit. That is good news and is a result of the pension credit awareness campaign that we have been running since early September. We are putting all the resources we can in place to process claims as quickly as possible.
Shadow Minister Nigel Huddleston.
Thank you. On these benches, we are deeply concerned about all those who will lose their winter fuel payments under Labour. Some pensioners will keep it if they claim pension credit, but we know that some won't apply or will have difficulty applying. So can the Minister confirm how many people does the Treasury assume are eligible for but will not claim pension credit and therefore will lose their winter fuel payment as a result? And what are they doing to close that gap?
Minister.
As he will understand that the estimates with regard to how many people might be eligible for pension credit are an imperfect science. They're based on a survey. And means testing, this very complex benefit, as all means tested benefits are, requires an assessment of people's income, but also of their savings. And it's about a pensioner household unit. So it is a complex set of procedures. All I can say is that I'm glad to see that we are targeting the support at those most in need. And it is something, Mr. Speaker, that was outlined in the Conservative Party manifesto in 2017, in which they state, we will means test winter fuel payments, focusing assistance on the least well-off pensioners who are most at risk of fuel poverty.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the newly appointed Treasury spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats, this is my first opportunity to welcome the Chancellor and Ministers to their places, and I wish to do so. Notwithstanding, on the winter fuel payments, the government does need to think again. I was recently speaking with Citizens Advice in St Albans, and they are deeply concerned that letters from the Department of Work and Pensions will only be sent out to people who they believe are eligible in December, meaning that many people may indeed lose out. So we have urged the government to either reverse this cut and make it taxable, or look at, for example, raising pension credit limits. Could the government confirm, are they going to look again at any of the measures that we have suggested on this particular issue?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome her to her place. We are writing to all pensioners, so I don't know where she has the misinformation from, but I can reassure her we are writing to all pensioners about this change in policy. We are also, for the first time, writing to all pensioners in receipt of housing benefit to encourage them to claim for pension credit. We have also, in our steadfast commitment to the triple lock, this will mean that the new full state pension will be worth around £1,700 over this Parliament. We have extended the Household Support Fund, which local authorities can use to help people who are on low incomes and struggling with their fuel bills. And we have also ensured that the Warm Homes Discount Scheme will provide £150 for low-income households, including pensioners.
George Simons.
Number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to answer this question together with questions 10, 11 and 14. The Government's growth mission will counteract 14 years of sluggish economic growth, kick-starting a decade of national renewal. And we have wasted no time in getting to work. We've already launched the National Wealth Fund, introduced reforms to the planning system and hosted the International Investment Summit, securing over £63 billion of investments right across the United Kingdom. Work continues, and I look forward to updating the House on our next steps for growth in tomorrow's budget.
George Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As co-chair of Labour Growth Group, I welcome the Chancellor's decision to unleash a revolution in investment in Britain. But the capital we must invest in is not just physical, it's digital too. For years, the members opposite cut capital investment in technology, depressing productivity and leaving workers with less money in their pocket. So can I ask the Chancellor what steps she is taking to boost long-term investment, especially in digital and technology?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question and also for the excellent work that he's doing as co-chair of the Labour Growth Group. I know that he is passionate about how we can use data to boost productivity and improve public services, and is working with Wigan Council and his local NHS trust to build data-driven tools to better deliver preventative healthcare. This government recognises that attracting private investment into digital and technology is crucial for driving growth. That's why we've already prioritised these in the modern industrial strategy to ensure that we are creating the right conditions for investment. Since this government took office, we've been pleased to welcome over £25 billion of investment into UK data centres, helping to create thousands of jobs and meet the growing demand for data, AI and machine learning.
Julie Minns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Chancellor agree with me that a modern NHS that is fit for the future is essential to our country's economic growth? And will she find time to visit the new Cumbria Pears School of Medicine when it opens in Carlisle next year?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I absolutely recognise the important role of the NHS and the health of our nation in getting people back to work and boosting the economy. That's why in tomorrow's budget we will set out further detail of how we will increase the number of elective appointments per week, delivering one of this government's first steps in office to reduce waiting times in the NHS. I was also delighted to meet with Professor Hugh Brady from Imperial College London at the International Investment Summit, and he shared with me detail on their important plans to partner with the University of Cumbria to help the next generation of medical professionals in my honourable friend's constituency to help address staffing shortfalls and healthcare needs in the area. I commend my honourable friend for the work that she's doing in this important area.
Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. High streets in Lichfield and Burntwood in my constituency were let down as for 14 years the party opposite fiddled while our high street economies burned. Can the Chancellor assure me that regenerating high streets as the physical manifestation of how well our economy is doing is a priority for this Treasury?
Chancellor.
I welcome my honourable friend to his place, and he's doing a great job for the people of Lichfield. This government is committed to delivering a decade of national renewal and ensuring that growth and prosperity is felt everywhere in our country. We will work in partnership with businesses and local communities to rejuvenate our high streets, which are the lifeblood of our local communities, including those in Lichfield and Burntwood. As part of this, we plan to introduce new powers to help fill vacant properties through the high street rental auctions. We know that's such an important issue for so many of our constituencies.
Ben Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of my constituents in Chelsea and Fulham come from European Union countries, and they're all passionate about the UK economy doing well. So does the Chancellor agree with me, Mr. Speaker, that for the UK to achieve its full economic growth potential, we need to deepen our trading links with the European Union? And if the Chancellor does agree with me on this, can she say how the Treasury is working with other government departments to achieve this?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Since taking office, this government has been working to reset our relationship with our European friends and neighbours. The Prime Minister recently met with the President of the European Commission and agreed to strengthen the UK-EU relationship to address global challenges such as the economic headwinds, geopolitical competition, irregular migration, climate change and energy prices. Improving our relationships will be good for business and good for consumers.
Harriet Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to ask the Chancellor to preempt tomorrow's budget, although I might actually have some luck if I do, based on current form. So instead, can she confirm to me that she fully appreciates how important agricultural property relief and business property relief are to farmers and family businesses who do so much to grow our local economies across the country?
Chancellor.
I recognise the importance of being able to pass on to the next generation the assets you have built up, and we'll be setting out more details on all of our tax policies in the budget tomorrow.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Shared prosperity funding has been used by local authorities such as Fife Council to drive economic growth, particularly around support for small businesses. That funding is due to end in April 2025. Can we get a commitment from the government that funding for these kind of schemes is going to continue?
Chancellor.
We will set out more details in the budget tomorrow, including the consequentials that will go to the Scottish Government as well.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Investment requires a measure of optimism, not the collapse in business confidence that she has engineered. She would have done better to stress some of the positives that she inherited, wouldn't she?
How to do my job by one of the members opposite who crashed our economy. £63.5 billion of investment into the UK were announced at our International Investment Summit. Investment in life sciences, investment in data centres and digital, investments in clean energy, because businesses have confidence that this government is bringing stability back to our economy and working with businesses to seize the opportunities. I'm really excited about doing that in all parts of our country and working with business to do so.
Dave Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Chancellor tell us, to the nearest £10 billion, how much extra would be available for long-term investment were it not for the fire sale of UK government bonds by the Bank of England, costing the taxpayer dearly?
Chancellor.
I started my career as an economist at the Bank of England, and I think unlike members opposite, I think it's incredibly important to recognise the independence of our economic institutions, including the Bank of England and, indeed, including the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses are the engine of our economy, but many of them are penalised for investing in their businesses because of the broken business rate system. Will the Chancellor ensure that investment is exempted from business rates, and will she ensure that the budget tomorrow is the final budget where business rates are a permanent feature?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable lady for her question, and I would also like to welcome her to her place. Small businesses and high street businesses are the lifeblood of all of our communities, including hers in St Albans, and it is important that we support them. In our manifesto, we committed to have reform of our business rate system. I'll be setting out more details in the budget tomorrow, as well as a business tax roadmap, because a business tax roadmap is what will give businesses certainty about the tax environment that they will be working with for the next 5 years.
John Morrison.
Number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to be welcomed by the opposition benches, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to see them in their place as well. Investment, Mr. Speaker, is a key part of the government's growth mission, alongside stability and reform. By ensuring adherence to robust fiscal rules and respect for our economic institutions, we are building the confidence needed to deliver greater investment across the country.
Tom Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that response. A key part of the Northern Powerhouse agenda was investment into our rail infrastructure, and residents in Cheadle constituency were excited that Cheadle train station finally got planning approval recently. However, recent talk of cuts to infrastructure has caused concern. Can the Minister put forward now that Cheadle train station is safe and will go ahead?
Minister.
The Government is fully committed to ensuring that investment into all parts of the UK, including in the north of England, create growth and impact for working people. The north of England is home to crucial levers to achieve this, as evidenced by our recent announcements in Teesside and Merseyside, creating thousands of jobs and securing long-term futures. The detail of individual projects will be confirmed in due course.
Bill Esterson.
The creation of the National Wealth Fund and the record success of the £63 billion of investment announced at the Investment Summit, on top of the investments that my right honourable friend has just announced about carbon capture in the North West, are examples of the success.
You're a very good member who's been here a long time. Please try and look at me occasionally. It will be helpful. Bill Esterson.
The successful investments announced are a great example of how this government is delivering for jobs and economic growth in the north of England across the country. Aren't they in stark contrast with the abysmal record of the party opposite and their 14 years in government?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. He has rightly pointed out that this country faces a choice: investment or decline. And as we saw at the general election, they've chosen investment, and that's what this government will deliver.
Kevin Bombia.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to answer this question together with question 20. Increasing economic productivity is a key mission for the Labour government's growth agenda. After 14 years of weak productivity, depressed living standards, unfunded spending commitments, we are absolutely adamant to bring our country into an upward trajectory using the National Wealth Fund and also the significant planning reforms that we're bringing together to ensure a decade of national renewal for our country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for her answer. Across the UK, the hospitality sector currently generates some £93 billion per year. In my constituency of Stevenage, there are many examples of local entrepreneurs, such as in the Old Town High Street and our neighbourhood centres, provide an excellent service to residents and visitors alike. What can my honourable friend do to help our hospitality services grow in Stevenage and across the UK?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. I'm fully aware of the assets of his constituency, including the neighbourhood centres that he mentions and the surrounding villages which host amazing music festivals. I very much recognise the contribution of the hospitality sector in Stevenage and to the UK economy, and I know he's a great champion of the Borough Business Club. I'm confident that our government's growth mission will ensure that hospitality businesses in Stevenage continue to grow, and the government looks forward to working with organisations such as UK Hospitality to facilitate this.
Sorry, Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Invest 2035 UK's modern industry strategy identifies advanced manufacturing as a growth-driving sector. Manufacturing in Dudley constituency accounts for 14.4% of the jobs, which is double the national average. What steps is the government taking to support and revitalise the manufacturing sector in Dudley, given its historic significance to the local economy and its potential for contributing to the UK's overall industrial strategy?
Minister.
As my honourable friend rightfully says, we have identified advanced manufacturing as a growth-driving sector in the recently published Industrial Strategy Green Paper. I know how important manufacturing centres such as the Very Light Rail National Innovation Centre are to Dudley and to the UK economy. We are committed to supporting advanced manufacturing through the industrial strategy, which, alongside sector plans, will be developed in partnership with businesses and stakeholders ahead of publication in spring 2025, and I hope she will contribute to that. Jobs will be at the heart of our industrial strategy and will be backed by employment rights which are fit for a modern economy.
James Wilde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Investing in transport infrastructure will boost productivity. So is the Chancellor listening to members from across the east of England and from across the House? And will she back the Ely Junction rail upgrade, which delivers benefits of £5 for every £1 invested?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. As he will know, the Chancellor does listen very carefully to everything that's said in the Chamber, and I'm sure she's noted what he said.
Jim Allister.
We in Northern Ireland were told that by virtue of dual access to the EU market and the United Kingdom market, we would see an increase in inward investment and economic productivity. Recently, InvestNI have had to admit there has been no uptake in investment because it's quite clear that the access to the EU market is countered by the barriers from the GB market. Does the government now recognise that that was a missold proposition?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and I think that we were missold a lot of things by the previous government, if that's what he's talking about. But I will remind him that we had the investment summit recently, where we secured £63 billion of private investment, creating more than 38,000 jobs, more than double what the previous government secured in 2023.
Bill Falston.
Question 7, Mr. Speaker.
You don't clap. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Household energy bills have fallen by 30% since their peak and are now around £800 lower for a typical household. This government is committed to improving the quality and sustainability of our housing stock through our Warm Homes Plan, further details of which will be set out through the spending review. This will be vital to making sure the UK is more energy resilient, to lowering household bills and to meeting our 2050 net zero commitment.
Will Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that many constituents of mine in Woking and across the country are living in fuel poverty and are fearful of losing their winter fuel allowance, will the Minister or the Chancellor agree that targeted support for low-income families and households should be included in tomorrow's budget or in the Warm Home Plan, so that no one this winter can have to decide between eating or heating?
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his remark. He should know our commitment to supporting vulnerable households with the costs of energy and food through our extension of the Household Support Fund, which we've already extended to the cost of £500 million from the end of September to the end of March. This will help local authorities to help those low-income families with the costs of essentials such as food and energy.
Goodman Sander.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This nation experienced the highest rise in energy bills of the G7 after Putin invaded Russia, because the party opposite left us dependent on natural gas and left us with the worst insulated homes in Western Europe. Can the Minister assure me that we'll be investing in both the clean energy and home insulation we need to lower energy bills for good?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend very much for his remarks there, because he's absolutely right to say that whilst it's essential that we tackle high energy bills now, it is also essential that we invest for the future to bring energy bills down for good. Critical to that is investing in our housing stock, as I've already mentioned, but also through GB Energy, investing in sustainable energy sources to make sure we improve our energy security and bring bills down for families across this country.
John Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 8, please.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In July, a Treasury assessment of public spending showed that this government inherited a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. I took immediate action. The benches opposite might not like it, but it is true. I took immediate... Sure.
I want to hear the Chancellor, and I will hear the Chancellor. Chancellor Exchequer.
It's not many of them, but they do still make quite a lot of noise. I took immediate action by identifying savings and making reforms to the spending and fiscal framework to ensure that never again can a government be allowed to make unfunded commitments and leave their successors with a massive black hole like the Leader of the Opposition and the previous Chancellor did. As my right honourable friend, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, said to the House yesterday, the budget will confirm detail of the robust fiscal rules which were set in our manifesto and will set out plans for tax and spending alongside an updated forecast from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that being honest and transparent about the state of public finances is the right thing to do, and that having a long-term plan to fix the foundations of our economy and the public finances is preferable to the short-term chaotic approach taken by the SNP in Scotland, which has led to 3 years of consecutive in-year emergency budget cuts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to sustainable public finances, unlike two of the parties opposite. A stable economy built on stable public finances is a key foundation for growth, and it is why this government are on these benches and the SNP and the Tories are on the benches opposite. The robust fiscal rules set out in our manifesto will put the public finances on a sustainable path to move the current budget into balance so that day-to-day costs are met by revenues and to get debt falling as a share of our economy. Given the challenging inheritance, this will require difficult choices, but ones that this government will take to fix the foundations of our economy.
George Baberinda.
Mr. Speaker, the last government left Eastbourne Borough Council in a position where it spends 49 pence in every pound on the cost of temporary accommodation in terms of the cash it collects in council tax. We need a solution. This is not sustainable for councils. It's not sustainable for families. Will the Chancellor commit to supporting councils with the cost of temporary accommodation and investing in preventing homelessness in the first place?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and he's absolutely right that it is a scandal the number of people housed in temporary accommodation, and a double scandal the amount that is costing taxpayers in Eastbourne and around the country. We made a commitment in our manifesto to build 1.5 million homes during the course of this Parliament, something that honourable members opposite oppose, but we are determined to do that because that is the way to bring down the cost of temporary accommodation and ensure that all families have a safe and secure roof over their heads.
Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is right and a challenge for the government to balance the public finances, and there has been a stiff target of 2% efficiency savings set in year for departments. What is she doing to make sure that that is robustly applied and that departments don't game it by putting off decisions which will end up costing more?
Chancellor.
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for that question, and the honourable member is absolutely right that in our July statement we set a 2% productivity target, not just for the Department of Health as the previous government did, but for all government departments. And ministers on this side of the House are absolutely determined to deliver against those, because that's the way that we ensure we've got resources for our frontline public services, our schools, our hospitals and our police that we all rely on.
Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the last government, the Chancellor said interest rates and gilt yields were driven by government policy. Will she guarantee that neither rise higher than they were under the Conservatives?
The last government, with a mini-budget, crashed the economy, sent interest rates and mortgage rates soaring, putting huge pressure on the costs that families and businesses borne. We will set out our budget tomorrow, including robust fiscal rules to pay for day-to-day spending through tax receipts and only to borrow to invest, whereas the previous government borrowed for day-to-day spending, which is why we're in the mess we are in today.
Shadow Minister Alan Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Wednesday in Washington, the Chancellor announced changes to the debt rules to allow Labour to borrow more. However, published Treasury advice says that increasing borrowing risks interest rates staying higher for longer. Does the Chancellor agree with her Treasury civil servants?
Chancellor.
I was very pleased that last week when I was in Washington, the International Monetary Fund said how important it was that countries, including the UK, borrow to invest in our capital infrastructure. That, under the plans that we inherit from the previous government, capital spending as a share of GDP is due to fall from 2.6% of GDP to 1.7%. If those decisions were to go forward, it would mean plans delayed and cancelled. We will set out our plans tomorrow in the budget, but it is crucial that we have rules that ensure that we pay for day-to-day spending through tax receipts and that we only borrow to invest, unlike the previous government.
Tim Rocker.
Question number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, no, we can do it. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The Conservative Party oversaw years of chaos which cost not just families but also businesses. This government is committed to delivering the economic stability needed for investor confidence. Our commitment to a credible budget, strong institutions and robust fiscal rules are at the heart of that plan. Earlier this month, we announced a record-breaking £63.5 billion of investment at our International Investment Summit. That shows through serious, stable government policy that the UK can attract investment from around the world to boost jobs and growth here in Britain.
Tim Roth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Chancellor, when does she think the party opposite lost their fiscal credibility? Was it the Liz Truss mini-budget? Was it the national debt rising from 65% to nearly 100% of GDP? Or was it the farcical promise to abolish national insurance?
Sorry. Who wants to go for that cup of tea? Normally it was Prime Ministers. I don't want to start doing it Chancellors. OK. Chancellor Yaxter.
I would answer all of the above, and that's why the honourable member is in his place and the honourable members are on the benches opposite.
Oh, my word. Jim Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for that. Minister, if you want to increase investor confidence, then the thing to do is to help the SMEs. Tomorrow you'll have an opportunity to do that. Can I ask the Minister what will be done to help SMEs? In Northern Ireland, they number some 85% of businesses that employ 10 and under number of employees. So for us in Northern Ireland, help the SMEs and you increase employment. Thank you.
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I know he's a proud supporter of businesses, big and small, in his constituency and across Northern Ireland. I'll set out more detail in the budget tomorrow, including around business rates, but I recognise how important it is for us to support small businesses to grow and create jobs right across the United Kingdom.
Journalist Gareth Davies.
Chancellor is clearly desperately trying to raise old ghosts along with debt and taxes. But it's her own broken promises that are coming back to haunt her and frightening investors. It doesn't have to be Halloween for socialists to spook British business. Why does she think that business confidence has fallen faster in the last 3 months than at any point since the pandemic?
Chancellor.
I would judge this government on its record. We secured £63.5 billion of investments announced right across the United Kingdom, creating nearly 40,000 jobs in constituencies up and down our country, creating good jobs, paying decent wages. That is more than twice of the investment that the previous government secured at their International Investment Summit, which shows how important it is that returning stability to our economy and working in partnership with businesses is something that the party opposite might want to learn a lesson from.
Taylor.
Question 12.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over 12 million pensioners will be protected by this government's commitment to the triple lock, with the new full state pension expected to increase by around £1,700 over the course of this Parliament. Pensioners also benefit from free eye tests, free NHS prescriptions and free bus passes.
Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that no impact assessment was carried out prior to the decision to cut the winter fuel payment. But can I ask the Chancellor whether any consideration was given to the burden that the daunting application form places on the elderly and the extra burden on charities like Age UK to advise them to complete it, and the evidence of that daunting burden being the 60% limit in the uptake that we've seen over the last decade? Will she work with her colleagues to simplify the application process, not only easing the burden on those losing the winter fuel payment, but also so they can achieve the benefits, the broader benefits that pension credit provide?
Minister got it in the first 2 minutes, never mind the last 3. Come on.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. I do say to him that there was an equality assessment analysis done by the government on the change, and it was published in September. I would recommend he take a look at it. And it was such a long question, I've now forgotten what he asked. The application forms. The application forms. What I would say is that...
Move on. OK, Blake Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 15.
Order. What's the honourable gentleman standing for? I hope he's not. Blake Stevenson.
Question number 15, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to answer this question together with number 16. As honourable members know, any changes to tax policy will be set out in tomorrow's budget. Members will also know that our approach to fixing the foundations of the economy will be one that protects working people. This Labour government will honour its commitment to protect working people by not increasing national insurance, the basic, high or additional rates of income tax or VAT.
Blake Stevenson.
Mr. Speaker, this government has gotten into an absolute pickle over the definition of working people, and people deserve certainty. In Mid-Bedfordshire, we're proud of the hard work of owners of nearly 5,000 small businesses. They are working people, creating jobs and growing our economy, all while providing for their families. They're lying awake at night worrying about yet higher taxes. Will the Chancellor give them a peaceful night's sleep ahead of tomorrow's budget and confirm that she will honour her manifesto commitment not to raise taxes on them?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think I'm preempting anything tomorrow by confirming the Chancellor will absolutely stick to our commitment not to raise taxes on working people through national insurance, the basic higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. And I might say, Mr. Speaker, that what people and businesses in his constituency might want is stability in this economy, is a government who supports investment in this economy, is a government who will get the economy growing and make people across Britain better off.
James Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Bury North, child poverty rates are at 43%, densely populated in 3 of our 9 wards, East, Red Vales and Moorside. Does the Minister agree with me that minimising tax rises for working people is just the starting point, and that tackling this crippling level of impoverishment for those in work for their poverty requires laser focus and intervention from this mission-driven government?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and he's absolutely right that whilst keeping taxes on working people as low as possible is crucial, the way to make people better off in the long run is through boosting public and private investment and delivering sustained economic growth. That is the focus of this Labour government, and that will guide the choices we make.
Shadow Minister Laura Strong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the election campaign, I held a press conference where I outlined the glaring funding gaps in Labour's plans and the taxes they might raise to pay for them. One of these taxes was employer national insurance contributions. The now Chief Secretary responded at the time, arguing this is a list of things, and I quote, Labour isn't doing. Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Minister, is it correct that raising employer national insurance contributions is something Labour isn't doing?
Well, I thank the honourable member for her question there. She will have to wait for the budget tomorrow. She was a minister not that long ago. She might remember it still, that the budget is obviously the time where these announcements are made. And can I restate our commitment, Mr. Speaker, so it's crystal clear that we will protect working people by not increasing national insurance, income tax or VAT. And might I add, Mr. Speaker, very briefly, that I note the Conservatives suddenly have a newfound interest in the livelihoods of working people. It is frankly a shame they never prioritised this during their 14 years in office, during which time and again they made working people pay for their mistakes.
Anna Dix.
Question 17, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government has launched a multi-year spending review to set out its long-term plans for public spending and to ensure every pound of taxpayers' money is spent effectively. The first phase of the spending review is due to report this week alongside the budget, and phase 2 will begin shortly after the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for his response. Recent NAO reports have revealed the extent of Tory economic mismanagement over the past 14 years. This has put capital projects like Bingley Pool in my constituency at risk. As a member of the Public Accounts Committee, I will ensure taxpayers' money delivers value. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Minister assure me and my constituents that tomorrow's budget will be based on an honest assessment of the public finances so this government can deliver on its promises?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question and can confirm that the budget tomorrow will be an honest assessment of the mess left to this country by the party opposite, but crucially, our plans for clearing up the mess and then delivering the change we promised to.
Go on, Tim Farron.
Mr. Speaker, given that I assume everybody in this place has eaten at some point today, don't we think that backing Britain's farmers is good use of public money? And given that there's a £2.4 billion budget for British farming that the last government underspent foolishly, recklessly and carelessly, will she and he, in this case, guarantee that at the very least the farm budget will be protected so our farmers can carry on looking after our nature and feeding us?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I actually haven't had breakfast today, so I'm looking forward to lunch and welcome, therefore, the short question from the honourable member. This government is committed to farming and rural affairs and is committed to the food production that they supply us, which is important for security of supply as well as for my lunch in due course.
We now go to topicals. Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Topical one, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow I will present my first budget. This will be a budget that fixes the foundations of our economy and delivers on the promise of change. It will turn the page on low growth and will be the start of a new chapter towards making Britain better off. More pounds in people's pockets, an NHS that is there when you need it, and businesses creating wealth and opportunity for all.
Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Chancellor for recently outlining investment in social housing, but in the interim, the Joseph Round will push 80,000 private renters on housing benefit, including 30,000 children, into very deep poverty during this Parliament. So will the Chancellor now consider unfreezing local housing allowance and relinking it to the actual cost of local rents so that these families can keep their heads above water?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and she makes a really important point, one that I think all of us see in our communities about the cost of housing outstretching people's incomes. We made a commitment in our manifesto to build 1.5 million new homes, and including social housing, which is so important and can give security to people who are otherwise left in insecure housing in the private rented sector.
As it's his farewell questions, let us come now to the Shadow Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is our final exchange in the House. So before tomorrow's fireworks, can I also wish the Chancellor well in her role going forwards? There has actually been a lot of common ground between us. For example, when before the election she said that raising employers' national insurance was a jobs tax that took money out of people's pockets. I very much agree with her on that. Does she agree with herself?
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable gentleman opposite knows better than almost anyone else that there is a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. That will require difficult decisions, but even in those circumstances, we will do everything in our power to protect the incomes of ordinary working people, and so we were committed to ensure that in their pay slips, no working people will have higher taxes after this budget.
Jeremy Hunt.
Mr. Speaker, we all know why she's inventing this fictitious black hole. 30 times this year, before the election, she promised not to raise tax, and tomorrow she's planning the biggest tax-raising budget in history. But more consensually, as this is our final exchange, I want to welcome her announcement last week of a £2.3 billion loan for Ukraine. Does she agree that the strongest signal of resolve that we can send to Putin is to commit to 2.5% of GDP on defence? And does she understand why so many are worried she is yet to do so?
Chancellor.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for that question. I have always respected the right honourable gentleman, but I think it is important that we don't deny the seriousness of the situation that we face with the black hole in the public finances, combined with lashing out at independent economic institutions, suggests that he's got more in common with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng than perhaps we thought. I watched my party lurch towards an ideological extreme and deny reality, and as a result we spent years in opposition. The Shadow Chancellor risks taking his party down the same path.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Newcastle-under-Lyme's beer and pub sector makes a significant contribution to the economy locally and nationally. Over our 76 pubs and 2 breweries generate £23 million in tax receipts each year. Can I ask the Chancellor to work with the sector to unlock its growth potential in Newcastle-under-Lyme and across our country?
Chancellor, Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. I know that Newcastle-under-Lyme and the whole county of Staffordshire have a proud brewing tradition, and I know my honourable friend will be an excellent champion for breweries in his constituency. Supporting pubs and breweries is very important for me as a minister. Indeed, on my first day in the Treasury's Darlington Economic Campus, I visited Durham Brewery, where I heard from the Society, for a work visit, where I heard from the Society of Independent Brewers and Associates about the huge contribution breweries make to British society. Further details will be set out by the Chancellor tomorrow.
Tom Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor recently announced an extra £550 million into the school rebuilding programme. Can she now confirm that all of the schools on that programme, including Bramwell High School, are fully funded and will be getting their repairs soon?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I went to school in the 80s and 90s and I was taught in porter cabins because there was not enough room in my school. I know how important it is that children are taught in proper facilities. We'll be setting out more details of our capital investments at the budget tomorrow.
Daniel Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask a question that comes out of local government. One of the frustrations that I found after 14 years in local government was that short-term cuts can often end up costing more in the long run, and one example I always comes to mind is about youth services. So I wanted to ask the Chancellor what she makes of the LGA's call that spending on prevention is routinely considered in both Treasury and in departmental spending decisions, and that we have better tracking of long-term outcomes.
The honourable member is right to point out opportunities for improvement, and as the Chancellor set out in her July statement, prevention will be at the heart of this government's new approach to public service reform. This will be set out in the spending review in the coming months.
Alan Maguire.
Mr. Speaker, many households are facing homelessness due to increasing household costs. What support can the Chancellor provide them?
Chancellor.
Building the homes that our country needs is a top priority of this government. We committed to build 1.5 million homes in this Parliament in our manifesto, including social housing, so people have access to secure and affordable accommodation and that every family has a roof over their head. We'll be setting out more details on all of this in the budget tomorrow.
Paul Foster.
Speaker, prior to being elected to this place, I was the leader of South Ribble Borough Council in Lancashire, where we continually struggled to set meaningful budgets due to the fragmented short-term policies of the previous Tory government. Will ministers please assure me that the proposals being considered in tomorrow's budget will see an end to these fragmented annual public sector funding allocations with the reintroduction of meaningful, forward-thinking multi-year settlements? Thank you.
Minister.
The Government recognises the significant pressures that all councils are facing. We are looking at consolidating funding streams for local authorities into the local government finance settlement and will work towards implementing our commitment to a multi-year financial settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During my SEND summit in Bodmin on Saturday, teachers and parents revealed the shocking extent of our broken special educational needs system in North Cornwall and across Cornwall. Thousands are struggling to get the support that they're entitled to. What are Treasury ministers doing to make sure local councils and schools are properly resourced to deliver an effective SEND system so families finally get the support they need and deserve?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I think it's an issue that resonates right across this House, with so many of us at our surgeries hearing terrible stories about the lack of support some of the most vulnerable children in society are given. I know that it's a priority for the Education Secretary as well, and we'll be setting out more detail of departmental settlements in the budget tomorrow.
Sam Carley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of North West Cambridgeshire, there are over 50 pubs and breweries which support over 1,500 jobs and contribute millions of pounds to our economy. Whether it be the Mulberry Tree Farm in Hampton or the Windmill in Northern Waterville, these are valued businesses that have earned their place in our local community. Does the Chancellor agree with me that they deserve to be supported and that this Labour government will give hospitality the tools it needs to thrive?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend very much for his question. He's absolutely right. The pubs make an enormous contribution to our society and economy. The current alcohol duty system supports pubs through draft relief, which ensures eligible products served on draft pay less duty. The government is also committed to delivering a fairer business rate system for high streets, including hospitality. Any decisions on future tax policy will be announced by the Chancellor at a fiscal event, the next of which is tomorrow.
Richard Hall.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. 82% of those who are seeing Labour take away the winter fuel payment from them are either below the poverty line or within £55 a week of it. How can the government justify this when they're not even allowing their FOI to be responded to from the Financial Times, so they're hiding the figures from the people?
Minister.
We're not hiding the figures. If I'd have got a chance, I would have said to the honourable gentleman that 455,000 of pensioners are paying the higher rate of tax and 39,300 are paying the additional rate. And there are many wealthy pensioners who have said to me that they don't need the winter fuel payment to pay fuel. Well, he says that, but actually there are a number of...
Answer the question, wonderful Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Residents in my constituency are still now feeling the pinch in their pockets and pay packets from Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. It is vital this government fix the foundations of our economy to deliver proper public services and a rise in living standards. Can the Chancellor tell me how she will deliver this for the North East and people across the country?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and she's right to draw attention to the disastrous impact of the Conservative mini-budget just over 2 years ago, which is still having an impact on people's lives as they pay higher mortgage bills as a result. This government has committed to return stability to the economy and working with business to reform our planning system, our pension system, our skills system. We've already brought in £63.5 billion of private sector investment to grow our economy in all parts of the country and deliver the jobs and the better wages that the constituents in Cramlington and right across the country need to see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small business owners are working people, and they are some of the hardest working people that I know. And I know the Labour Party struggled to define them over the weekend. But does the Chancellor agree that any rise in fuel duty, which the Conservatives froze or cut for 14 years, would be a tax on those hard-working people or those hard-working small business owners?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. The previous government factored into their forecast an increase in fuel duty this year. I will set out our plans in the budget tomorrow.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister update the House on how the government will help to secure better returns for pensioners, whilst also unlocking the opportunities for pension savings to help generate growth?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor launched the landmark Pensions Review in July, which I am leading and which is looking at measures to drive more UK pension investment into the UK economy, boosting growth but also improving pension savers' outcomes. And I know that there is interest across this House in this agenda.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Countryside Alliance research shows that rural households spend up to £800 a year more on fuel than urban households. So, further to the question from my honourable friend from Meriden, will she protect rural communities in the budget tomorrow?
Minister.
He is urging me to comment on the budget and he'll have to wait till tomorrow.
Neil Duncan-Jordan.
Speaker, this government has inherited a Britain that is now the most unequal country in the G7, bar America. The UK's 50 richest families own 50% of the wealth of the country. Our tax system, in fact, exacerbates this inequality with unfair loopholes that benefit those who have wealth rather than those who go to work. What steps...
No. These are topicals and I decide. Minister.
Well, thank my honourable friend for his question. He will have to wait for the budget. He'll have to wait for the budget tomorrow, but he will know already that we've committed to closing some tax loopholes, including VAT on private schools, the non-dom loophole, and cracking down on tax avoidance.
Carol Bowden.
Speaker. In South Devon, the average house price is now 14 times the average salary at £425,000. What measures is the Chancellor taking to ensure that rural and coastal areas like the South Hams, which face huge digital and transport connectivity problems, are included in measures to boost economic growth?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable lady for her question. Our commitment to build 1.5 million homes is about ensuring that all of our constituents get the chance to have a roof over their head, including in rural areas, more social housing as well, so people can have a secure tenancy. The honourable lady is also absolutely right to raise issues around digital connectivity. We'll be setting out more details about infrastructure investment in the budget tomorrow.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Buy now, pay later is attractive to young people who are trying to survive on zero-hour contracts with irregular hours. What assurances can the Chancellor give me that the coming regulation will protect this group from problematic debt?
I thank the honourable lady for her question. The proposed regulations will drive high standards of conduct among buy now, pay later firms, ensuring that consumers receive clear information and that they have access to strong protections. Our proposal will also allow the FCA to require buy now, pay later firms to carry out affordability checks, ensuring that only firms that lend to borrowers who can afford to repay.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the last election campaign, Labour candidates across Somerset said a Labour government would cut energy bills by £300. Would the Chancellor set out the timescale for fulfilling that promise?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I note the number of Labour MPs that we now have in Somerset and across the southwest of England. We will be setting out more details in the budget tomorrow, but our commitment to invest in homegrown energy will boost our energy security, create good jobs here in Britain and begin to reduce people's bills, along with our programme to better insulate homes, something the previous government failed to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 100 councils in England have come together to call for 5 key changes to unlock much-needed investment in new council homes. They'll welcome the news of £500 million of additional grant and change to right-to-buy rules, but one issue they also raise is HRA, debt and finance. Can I ask the Treasury team, will they look specifically at the debt allocations and how HRA debt is accounted for to unlock much-needed investment in council homes?
Councils' housing revenue accounts are a significant part of local authority finances, and it's therefore not right to exclude this from our fiscal rules. But I can reassure my honourable friend that this government's commitment to deliver 1.5 million new homes will be delivered.
Gregory.
Mr. Speaker, however working people are defined, can the Chancellor not accept that people on low income and part-time employees who earn up to £300 a week should be exempt from paying income tax?
Chancellor.
We'll set out details of our tax policy in the budget tomorrow, but this government have made a commitment to working people that we will not increase their income tax, their national insurance or the VAT that they pay.
Right, that completes questions. I'll let the front benches change over.